Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. In this episode, I want to discuss the concept of underlaboring. Underlaboring was proposed by the philosopher John Locke, and then it was taken up by the founder of critical realism and the philosophy of meta-reality, Roy Bhaskar. So what I will do to start is I will read you a portion of my book, Eudaimonic Utopia, which talks about underlaboring, and then I will proceed to apply it to Maoism and attempt to demonstrate why Maoism Third Worldism is what appears at the end of the process. So let me put on my spectacles and go ahead and open up this window here, and then we'll go ahead and read it. You can see an underlabored conclusion. So this is the end of my book. Although Bhaskar identified or misidentified, in my opinion, I think he misidentified it, his own personal perspective with Advaita Vedanta, which is non-dual Vedanta. Meta-reality itself, he contended, is a secular framework. It does not rest upon Adi Shankar's ideas or an acceptance of its tenets. Meta-reality, critical realism, and dialectical meta-realism can furthermore be approached from a considerable array of relative epistemological and other frameworks. Applying them to our lives will require the praxis of underlaboring. And I put that word underlaboring in Arabic as well as Sanskrit. That designation was effectively and ingeniously introduced by John Locke, a distinguished scholar. He was simultaneously a late Renaissance English empiricist philosopher and a discerning herald to the Enlightenment, the age of reason. These are Locke's own words, followed by Roy Bhaskar's application to critical realism. To be employed as an underlaborer involves clearing the ground a little and removing some of the rubbish that lies in the way to knowledge, which certainly had been very much advanced in the world. If the endeavors of ingenious and industrious men had not much been cumbered with the learned but frivolous use of uncouth, affected, or unintelligible terms introduced into the sciences, and there made an art of to that degree, that philosophy, which is nothing but the true knowledge of things, was thought unfit or incapable to be brought into well-bred company and polite conversation. Vague and insignificant forms of speech and abusive language have so long passed for mysteries of science, and hard or misapplied words with little or no meaning have by prescription such a right to be mistaken for deep learning and height of speculation that it will not be easy to persuade either those who speak or those who hear them that they are but the covers of ignorance and hindrance of true knowledge. To break in upon the sanctuary of vanity and ignorance will be, I suppose, some service to human understanding, though so few are apt to think they deceive or are deceived in the use of words, or that the language of the sect they are of has any faults in it, which ought to be examined or corrected. And I hope I shall be pardoned if I have in the third book which is book 3 of this work that I am reading from right now. It's dwelt long on this subject and endeavored to make it so plain that neither the invetorousness of the mischief nor the prevalency of the fashion shall be any excuse for those who will not take care about the meaning of their own words and will not suffer the significancy of their expressions to be inquired into. Next, I will read from a passage by Roy Bhaskar, which I think is clarifying, and it shows how Roy himself applied it to his own critical realism as an actual methodology. The metaphor of underlaboring comes from the British empiricist philosopher John Locke. If you're wondering why I have that ellipsis there, ... it is because of an error that Roy made. And so I'm canceling out that error. If you want to know what it is, you can go and check the source. Critical realism aspires to clear the ground a little, removing in the first place the philosophical rubbish that lies in the way of scientific knowledge, especially, but not only, in the domain of the social sciences, and in this way to underlabor for science, and, partly in virtue of this, it argues, more generally for practices oriented toward human well-being and flourishing. These philosophies have been inherited largely unthinkingly from the past. At one time, they may have played a progressive role, but they have long since ceased to do so. Indeed, we can say with Albert Einstein that the word we have created today as a result of our thinking thus has problems which cannot be solved by thinking the way we thought when we created them. That should be the world, actually, I believe. That's a misprint on my part. That is from the book Enlightened Common Sense, The Philosophy of Critical Realism, pages 1 through 2. And now I will go ahead and end the screen share and come back to the full screen of me and talk about how that relates to Maoism, Third Worldism, in my view. First of all, Maoism. There are many different Maoisms, not just one these days. Of course, there is Mao Zedong thought, which is the Maoism of Mao, but since Mao's time and even during Mao's time, a number of different forms of Maoism emerged. Some of those Maoisms are, for example, First Worldisms. In other words, they argue that communism or revolutionary socialism might be established in the first world before it is established in the third or fourth worlds. I would argue that that is certainly a possibility. We can never discount that suddenly, by some miraculous event, the first world, such as the US and the empire, may gain some degree, a great degree, really, of dialectical or revolutionary potential. But I think we need to deal with the facts on the ground. Right now, the first world, in particular the US, has a tremendous lack of revolutionary or dialectical potential. So the chances of there being a revolution in the first world, and especially here in the US, I would say are very remote, but certainly not altogether impossible. And I would hope that after revolutions occur in the third and fourth worlds, assuming there is still a first world, and I'm not sure about that, but there might be, that revolutions may move over into the first world as well. And so we can talk about a more broadened concept of communism or socialism to include the first world as well. But I don't think that this is the right time. At this point, the best I think we can do here in the first world is to stand up against oppression. And there is certainly a lot of oppression in the first world. To defend the helpless, for example. Although many people have argued that communists should not involve themselves or not support any kind of political activity in the current world, they call that social justice programming or social justice talk. What's wrong with social justice? If you go back and look at Marx himself, he was a co-writer of a letter that was sent to congratulate Abraham Lincoln upon re-winning in his race to the presidency. If Marx did not feel that Lincoln could be a benefit to the United States, why would he waste his time in writing to Lincoln? And why would his comrades also waste their time in the same way? So I don't think that we should fear being involved or standing up for the defenseless among us. But we should realize that the ultimate goal is communism or revolutionary socialism all over the world, and that it will likely begin in the third world or in the fourth world, or hopefully both. So that would be my underlaboring of Maoism, to essentially cast out much of Maoism as it exists right now, because many Maoists, not all, perhaps most, I would say, are First Worldists, meaning that they actually believe that it is possible to have a revolution right here in the first world. I would say that that is a nice hope, but I think it is also a waste of time when there are other things that we could be doing here in the first world that would better suit our time. And focusing upon staging revolutions when there is no revolutionary potential to speak of here in the first world is simply useless. And I would rather occupy my time with things that I feel are worthwhile. So I think that if you take John Locke's concept of underlaboring as it has been adapted by Roy Bhaskar in his critical realism, you can begin with Maoism, and then you can take out the parts of Maoism, in a sense, the trash that has accumulated within Maoism. By trash, I mean the First Worldism that has accumulated in Maoism, and replace it with Maoism, Third Worldism. This has been Mark, by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant evening and an even better day tomorrow.